Welcome to the Pachinko recap. After Korea was annexed by Japan in 1910, the Koreans lived in a state of fear from the Japanese. We follow Sunja's life as a child facing identity and cultural discrimination, until at an elderly age she retraces her past. Sunja lives with her parents, Huni and Yangjin, at a boarding house for missionaries. On one drunken night of intense labor and spouts of Japanese resistance that goes too far, it causes the death of a family friend. Not so long after, her father Huni dies from tuberculosis. Jolted into work, Sunja is made to die for abalone. 9 years later, Sunja is grown up and meets Ka Han-soo, a new district wealthy fish broker that catches her eye. At home, her mother Yangjin has orphan helpers Dong-hee and Bok-hee. Yangjin worries that Sunja is going to get hurt if she continues to travel alone. This is reconfirmed when she is harassed by Japanese teenagers. They drag her in to be raped in a room, but she is saved by Han-soo. They initially form a bond over washing clothes, as Han-soo wasn't always rich. As a teenager, Han-soo worked as a math tutor for the American wealthy Holmes family. When his father Jong-yu gets into debt with loan shark Ryochi, and after trying to spend more than he can afford on a girl that he loves, Han-soo wants to help him repay the debt, but his father beats him and reminds him to forget about him and leave him behind because the Holmes family is going to take him to America. And when they try to repay the loan, an earthquake erupted in the Kanto region and his father was killed. They escape into the midst of the earthquake. He quickly alerts the Holmes family to leave their car and run to their ship. In the aftermath, the city is in ruins. The Holmes family is deceased, and he stays with Ryochi as mobs of Japanese vigilantes went after Korean people. Unable to read or write, he teaches her about the world, about America and Europe. They meet up regularly. After the intense rain, they gather mushrooms, and for the first time they gather more than mushrooms. They perform coitus multiple times, sneaking around the town. However, Sunja starts to get croaks of strange stomach pains and missing her bleeding months. Confiding in Han-soo, he gives her a gold pocket watch, but admits that he can't marry her because he is already married to a woman in Japan with 2 daughters. For business purposes, they can have their child and he will take care of her financially, meaning she would have to live as his mistress and have a life of secrecy. Feeling betrayed and ruined, Sunja admits this to Yangjin. She is willing to accept the repercussions and ready to leave the boarding school. This night, a man stumbles in. Unwell, the doctor believes that he has tuberculosis and will die. They find his name to be Isaac. Strangely, in the morning he wakes up. He wants to repay them and goes into town to send a wire to his family, and taking Sunja out to lunch. Isaac knows that Sunja is pregnant. He is willing to pay for her child and give them to a childless couple, but she gives him a compelling speech about how her father was disabled and she wasn't meant to be conceived, meaning she won't give up on her child. Realizing his error and absolves to marry Sunja. Under Christianity, they get married. For the first time, Yangjin ventures out to a rice vendor, begging for Korean white rice, typically only sold to Japanese people. But the Korean vendor sells it to her when she mentions that Korean white rice is the only thing that she can offer Sunja before she leaves for Osaka with her husband. That night, Sunja tastes white rice for the first time. She leaves her hometown and with Isaac they travel to Osaka, where after the annexation, Koreans were sent as laborers into Japan, assimilated into speaking Japanese. In 1931, they arrive in Osaka. At the station they meet Isaac's brother, Yoseb, and at her new home in a mining town, she meets Yoseb's wife, Kyung-hee. She is introduced to dried octopus and starts to have a diet of white rice. That night they fornicate for the first time and he frolics in her bushes. 1 month later, she wakes up late. Whilst Isaac has already gone out to work in the church, she mourns the last sense of her mother. They get a visit from the loan sharks. Realizing that Yosef borrowed money to pay for Isaac's illness, she sells Han-soo's watch to pay it off. Furious, Yosef scolds them for embarrassing them and him. Now the village will know that he isn't the head of the house and women are paying for his bills, and he heads off to drink. At the same time, a mother begs Isaac to convince her laborer to stop spouting insurrection and head home. The laborer explains his problems of being an outcast and forced to work, seen as a second-class citizen and shamed for being Korean. Whilst this is happening, Sunja begins to give birth. Isaac retrieves his brother from the bar, where people are harassed by Japanese police. At home and as head of the house, he names the baby Noah. Han-soo eventually purchases back the watch. Years passed. They give birth to another child named Beck. On one strange day, Noah runs home, explaining that his father wasn't there to pick him up. They visit the church, and the elders tell her about Isaac being arrested. They go by the police station with Yoseb. Through Noah's translations, the policeman explains that Isaac has been arrested for political reasons, and they believe he is guilty. Yoseb promises to get Isaac out and immediately rushes off to ask his boss for help. Noticing another Korean lady inside, she is able to explain that she knows Sunja from Isaac, and they are taken to a dimly lit room where the resistance leaders explained what happened. Isaac was a part of their resistance and wanted to bring people together to fight for what was theirs. They believe Isaac will be kept in prison as someone has betrayed them, and they are arrested. Unable to read and write, and without any resistance knowledge, Sunja is released. They spot Isaac as he is being transferred to the prison. It is now too late. Yoseb's boss is unable to help, and not wanting to get any scrutiny from political prosecution, he fires Yoseb. Promising to look after the family, she wakes up early to make kimchi to sell at the market. Kyung-hee stays home to look after the kids. Yoseb continues on looking for work. Noah is forced to walk to school by himself. Without the knowledge of Sunja, Hansu advises him to look forward and never back, giving him a special cloth. At the market, Sunja is forced to learn the trick of the trade and sells to customers. We jump 30 years into the future. In 1989, Sunja is a grandmother living in Osaka. Isaac is deceased, and she is the caretaker for Kyung-hee. Noah is deceased, and her only son is Beck, who is a pachinko store owner, and they live together with his wife Etsuko. He's thinking about expanding and has recently signed for the loan. Sunja's grandson is Solomon Beck. He works in real estate and deals under the company's shift lease. He has recently returned from America to broker a $1 billion yen deal to landowner Mrs. Han, who for the past couple years is unwilling to sell. As a Korean, he tries to appeal to her, but fails. Solomon learns from a call that Hannah, his ex-girlfriend and daughter of Etsuko, is still alive, and she is out there. She doesn't want him to spread the word of this to their family. On the other hand, Beck finds out from a private investigator that 8 years ago she was sighted at a brothel. Aunt Kyung-hee dies in her sleep. Priest Ri comes by to pray for her, and Solomon gets the idea to broker his deal by using Sunja to appeal to Mrs. Han over their generational trauma in Korea and Japan. Sharing a meal, she realizes that she is trying Korean white rice from the motherland. After all of this, Sunja doesn't want Solomon to force Mrs. Han to sell because she knows the trauma they had to endure. That night, Tom Andrews, his superior, confirmed that Mrs. Han had agreed to sell because he used his grandma. They celebrate this monumentous moment. At the signing, she wavers signing the document, explaining the torture and the problems of entering Japan as an outsider, sleeping 4 families in one room. Solomon tells her not to sign, and they lose the deal. After changing his mind and encouraging the landowner Mrs. Han to turn down the deal, Abe-san uses his connections to blackball Solomon from all the banks in Japan. Tom Andrews won't be any help because this failure has driven his career lower. Searching for Hana, he runs into Haruki, a friend from his childhood. They catch up at Haruki's communal living area, meeting orphans Naruko and her brother Takashi. Masako and Satoru are the owners, and they used to be family friends of Beck. They share dinner and wish each other well. As he continues to look for Hana, he receives a troubling call from Tom. He is getting fired from Shifley's for losing the hotel deal, meaning he won't be able to return to America as Shifley covered the visa to America. At the same time, Hana calls to ask for help. We flash back 20 years prior, where teenage Solomon and Hana ditch school to mess around in a convenience store. Hana manipulates him into stealing candy to prove he likes her. He is arrested for this. Beck pleads for his release, and a phone call from the higher-ups helps this case. This is the last straw, and Beck decides to send him to a boarding school in America. Gaining inspiration from the conversation with the landowner, Sunja returns to Busan, Korea, touching the waves as it crashes on her feet, and purchasing dried octopus to remind her of Kyung-hee, and pouring her ashes into the hometown lake. She searches for her father's grave, but it is missing, replaced by a modern parking lot. They reach out to the authorities, but nothing comes up, and she is discriminated for being Korean, residing in Japan. Luckily, attached to the file is Bok-hee's address. They visit her and catch up. She explains that after Sunja left, her mother fell into a deep sadness. As the war broke out, they became more of a burden to her mother. A man came forth to offer her and Dong-hee comfortable factory jobs in China, and they took up the offer. After the war, they returned. Saddened by the passing of Yang Jin, Dong-hee failed to adjust to the new life, and one day she found her body at the cove where they used to wash clothes. She is able to reunite with her father's grave, and realizes that the past is already gone, and she now needs to be with her family in Osaka. Solomon meets Mamoru Yoshi, a wealthy businessman with connections to the Yakuza, proposing the idea of opening pachinko parlors across other Asian countries. As he thinks on this idea, the entire family is alerted to Hana's condition. She has contracted AIDS and there is no cure. Her death is moments away, and as she is about to pass, the family comes together. After the sad and blissful passing, Solomon blames Sunja for getting him fired, and thinks about accepting the deal with Yoshi. Beck is against it because his grandfather tried to trick him into pachinko parlors with illegal activities in them, but he managed to escape with the help of Sunja. In the end, he decides to accept the deal with Yoshi, using his Yakuza connections to force Mrs. Han to sell. There, they will force Shifley's hand, as they want to use the land to build a massive hotel, and they will have all the leverage. Sunja gives Solomon a gift, the special cloth or the pocket watch that Hansu gave Noah. She believes that it has protected her all this time. This is where the series ends. Make sure to subscribe, and for more, watch this.